Perfect. Perfect world, mate.
Here, man.
I fucked it up.
No, that was perfect.
I'd like to talk about perfection. What actually is perfect? Well, generally it's considered to be without fault or flaw, but is that ever actually a possibility? Is anything perfect? I mean, even diamonds, which are considered to be as close to flawless as can be, typically have small and tiny imperfections. So what possibility have I actually got if I apply this to a medium such as television or movies? Well, in this video I'm looking at whether a movie can ever be classed as perfect. So firstly, a question. Doesn't every film suffer plot holes, continuity errors and unbelievable story development? Doesn't that then mean, by definition, that it's not perfect? Well, firstly, we need to retrain our thinking and understand exactly what defines perfect. The Collins Dictionary calls it something that is as good as it could be. It further goes on to extend that definition as an emphasis of a person, thing or activity that is very suitable for that individual. Great! So that means that perfection is actually subjective. Each person experiences perfection differently. But movies are a mass medium. They are there for large audiences to receive enjoyment, so how can any film ever be deemed perfect? Growing up in the late 80s and early 90s, there were so many films that were great, films that became classics, and films that will live on in the mind for a lifetime. Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Superman, The Goonies, E.T. and so on. But for me, one movie stands out head and shoulders above them all. One so great that for me it isn't just a film, it's family. It's a part of me and was such a work of art, a masterpiece that regardless how often I see it, I still enjoy it every time. It's a movie that made me fall in love with cinematography and later inspired me to study films. It's a movie with something for everyone, jokes for young and old alike, a masterpiece that synergizes two widely divergent plots, develops its characters in true and meaningful ways, and does so without ever feeling convoluted and or conflicted. The movie manages to be engaging to a wide array of audiences, and still over 30 years later, it feels on point and holds its head up with pride as being one of the best films ever made. Released in 1985, Back to the Future is a time-travelling movie written by Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, with the former also directing fresh off the set of Romancing the Stone. The story follows Marty McFly, who lives a typical 1980s all-American teen lifestyle. He has a girlfriend, Jennifer, has his own band named the Pinheads, is an extremely talented skateboarder and has a love of Van Halen music. Marty is the youngest of 3 kids with an older brother Dave and sister Linda. His parents are George McFly and Lorraine McFly, formerly Baines. Marty's life is a fairly average one. He attends high school where he is regularly in trouble for arriving late, he worries too much about failure, seems to be a bit of an odd one out in his family, enjoys nothing more than kicking back with his girlfriend at weekends, and has a regular group of friends. Well, all except one, Dr. Emmett Brown, otherwise known as Doc, and as we come to find out during the course of the film, Marty's greatest friend and mentor. Doc Brown is an overly verbose, elderly, eccentric crackpot, Einstein-esque scientist and talented inventor. When the movie begins, the Doc has been missing for around a week and Marty, who is the Doc's apprentice lab assistant, seems to be visiting to take care of the Doc's affairs whilst he is out of town. As viewers, our senses are immediately attacked by a constant tick-tocking as we see the Doc's unkempt garage stroke lab stroke home with clocks everywhere. Cluttered around in between is what seem to be numerous other gadgets, one as such being a behemoth guitar amplifier that has enough dials and volume to put Spinal Tap's amps to shame. After blowing himself clean across the garage with the aforementioned faulty amplifier, Marty receives a call from Doc wishing to meet at Twin Pines Mall later that night at 1:15 AM. We then find out that Marty is late again, so following the scene we get the incredibly cool short montage of Marty attempting to race across town by skitching using the back of cars. It's then from here that we start to get to know about Marty's wider life, and perhaps more importantly, his vulnerabilities and lack of confidence, despite our initial impressions.
You're never gonna get a chance to play in front of anybody.
Marty, one rejection isn't the end of the world.
Nah, I just don't think I'm cut out for music.
But you're good, Marty. You're really good. And this audition tape of yours is great. You've got to send it into the record company.
This is perfect character development because our main protagonist, which up to this point has been identified as a hugely hip and cool teen, now has depth. It allows us as viewers to identify with the main character of Marty, sympathise and put ourselves in his position. This means that we are literally brought along on the journey as the film develops, as opposed to just tailing behind separate and mere witnesses. The depth of characters in this film are just so succulent that even the smaller parts of characters such as Jennifer are developed and given their own characters and motivations. After a short and brief introduction to the characters and life of Marty, we then get to meet Doc Brown and perhaps our second protagonist. Meeting in the early hours of the morning on the deserted Twin Pines Mall parking lot, save for the GMC value van emblazoned with the words Dr. E. Brown Enterprises, could have, as viewers, given us a feeling of unease and apprehension, but we are beautifully reassured by the introduction of Einstein the dog that we are safe and in the presence of friends. This also helps when tension builds for the big reveal of the Doc's magnum opus. As steam billows from the back of the value van and tyre ramps are lowered, we are treated to our first glimpse of the time-travelling DeLorean. The slow-standing view of Marty and confused look from Einstein allow us to understand that this is a fantastic sight to behold. As a child growing up and even now as an adult, this scene along with the rest of its appearances firmly concreted everything I ever needed to know about DMC DeLoreans. They are incredibly cool. Sure, I know that they were slow, riddled with problems, unreliable and nowadays even hugely expensive, but would I still own one? You betcha! And I believe that it's much the same with any other 70s, 80s or 90s child. It's the sign of an icon that regardless of any problems, you would still own one, and this car is iconic. I struggle to think of any other movie car that is anywhere near as cool as this is. Okay, maybe the Batmobile. We then find out that although the time circuitry runs on electricity, it requires radioactive plutonium to generate the 1.21 gigawatts of power to supply the kick of energy required for time travel. We also find out at this point that stealing plutonium from Libyan terrorists is extremely hazardous for your health, as poor Doc Brown is tragically shot dead to Marty's horror. Their next target, Marty, but in a bout of extreme dumbfounded luck, the Libyan's AK-47 rifle jams and allows Marty that extra time he needs to jump into the front seat of DeLorean and attempt to make his escape. The Libyans give chase and in all the panic, Marty mistakenly nudges the time circuits to on, which happens to be set to the last day Doc programmed in, the day he discovered time travel, November the 5th, 1955. As Marty accelerates to 90 to escape, he hits the magic 88 mph mark and disappears in a flash of blue and white sparks and a trail of flames, taking him back in time. And this concludes Act 1, all occurring in a little over 30 minutes. At no point is there a dull moment, nor does it feel rushed or forced or bombard you with too much information. It leisurely paces you throughout and glides you along with the story, and this continues throughout the entirety of the movie. This for me is just one of the few reasons this film is perfect. Be young or old, this film is engaging, and at no point are you left wondering what is occurring on screen. Time travel films are notoriously complex, and at no time is Back to the Future egotistical or pretentious. It's not full of its own self-importance, and yet it handles some incredibly difficult plot points with seamless fluidity. This is just one of the reasons why Back to the Future is still widely considered one of the best screenplays ever written, holding its current ranking at number 56 with the Writers Guild of America. With ease, it manages 3 separate and extremely complex timelines beautifully. The original 1985, the movie begins at, the 1955, Marty travels to, and the alternate 85 when he arrives back. Throughout these timelines, we see the psyches of dozens of characters change through multiple variations and versions of themselves. This extremely difficult challenge is handled by the actors completely genuinely and believably. It manages all of this while still maintaining a scientific, entertaining and comedic element suitable for all ages. Is it really any wonder why it's ranked one of the best screenplays ever written? Okay, so that's the end of the video. We hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up. This is just part 1 of what will be a 3-part video on Back to the Future. Your comments as always are welcome below, and don't forget to subscribe and tick the bell icon to be notified of future videos like this one. If you enjoy what we do, I would also like to quickly point you towards our new Patreon channel, www.patreon.com/screenfocus. Please help to support us, and in return we will feature your name in our future videos, and you even have the opportunity to become one of our executive producers. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. We try to bring you as much engaging content as we can, and we will continue to do so. See you next time.